Kristen, what's your company name?
I am the managing partner of Fall River Employee Benefits in Denver, Colorado.
And Sam, I think we're keeping this to an hour, correct?
Yep, that's right.
So Lisa, we did talk about moving this to an hour.
Yep. All right. Yeah, Susan has just joined, and Jennifer, welcome. Our attendees are coming on. So Kristen, tell us a little bit about how I know this is your own business. So can you tell us how your vision and why you started your business?
Sure, happy to. So I spent the first 15 or so years of my career as an actuary and an underwriting executive for insurance companies. So that means I'm a total numbers nerd. I don't tell everybody that because then I don't get invited back to parties, but I have pieces of paper on my wall that say I'm a total nerd, just confirming what everybody in middle school already knew. So I, about 15 years ago, after that, first 13, 15 years of my career, I, in that process of being an underwriting manager, I had handed out maybe 15,000 health insurance renewals to employers all over the US, both fully insured, self-funded, and saw very quickly who got good ones, who got bad ones, and why, and what employers could actually do about this. Because I noticed that employers were like, in every other area of their business, entrepreneurs are so brilliant and have a game plan and they know exactly how they're going to meet all their goals. And then I ask them, how are you going to meet your health insurance, budget and your recruiting and retention goals with your benefits? And they say, oh, I don't know. We just got to wait and see what we get from the insurance company and how bad it is. They're just there to throw up their hands. And, if we ran our businesses the way a lot of folks run their health plans, we'd be out of business. And so we've got to, take a different approach, run your health plan like a business, particularly for those that have locations in the US. It is critical because healthcare costs left to their own devices will just scream up every year, and employers can't afford that kind of cost increase. So we're going to talk about some strategies to approach that a different way, get a little bit more control over your renewal increases.
Oh, that's great. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so we can kick off the People Strategy Forum.
Great.
So can everybody see my screen there? Great.
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So Lisa, can you kick us off? For everybody that right now, Shar is in Puerto Vallarta and down in Mexico, and so there's had a bit of a switch of internet, so she's not able to kick us off today. But
I'm here, but
Absolutely. Well, I'll try and do my best to fill those shoes. I'm not sure how well that's going to go, but hi everybody and welcome to our weekly People Strategies Forum, where every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, we discuss actionable and innovative ways to engage and lead people in a rapid change world. My name is Lisa Jackson. I am acting as your forum host today. I am a culture expert and been guiding leaders on fueling positive change since 2000. Please welcome also Sam Reeve, forum sponsor and CEO of Comp Team, and Shar Miller, co-owner of Rocky Mountain Health Advocates and HR with a Heart. Also Sumit Singla, people and change consultant in India. Sumit is the brainchild behind the amazing visual content for our cause, as well as moderating our chat. So I'm pretty excited to learn about today's topic because I know I have clients that are wondering about this, how benefits will change for 2021 with team compensation expert Kristen Russell, who's managing partner of Fall River Benefits in Denver. If you've not yet attended our forum, we really do thrive on actionable tips and also really engaging discussion-based format. So your input helps us all have a great dialogue and chat, and we will be very active in the chat. And please ask your questions and you share your thoughts. And with that, let's do this.
Perfect.
Kristen, you're on.
So, well, just one moment real quick as I just talk about our sponsor here. So we have our sponsor is TMA. And for those that are not familiar with the TMA method, We talk about a lot of those applications here on the forum as throughout the year and so forth. So stay tuned to hear some more. And also, if you're interested in doing a demo of the platform, you can just go ahead and sign up for that at the TMA Method US, or just email me and I'll make sure that happens for you. Also, as part of our typical offering that we allow members of that are joining us to try a TMA talent assessment. And so what that is it's a free assessment that you can take that highlights your talents, your competency levels in certain applications. And we also provide a free coaching session with that, so that you know how to apply that in your work environment. So a lot of fun things there to do, and interesting how you can apply it to your workspace. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Kristen, you can tell us a little bit about your topic today.
Sure. Well, today we will be, if I can get us into slide mode. Are you ready for me to share my screen, Sam?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Apologize, we'll have to do this in 2 steps. So today we'll be talking a little bit about the election results here in the US and how that's going to impact healthcare and other benefits. We'll be talking about some trends in healthcare and benefits. And then finally, we'll be talking about some strategies to help you get a better approach to your healthcare that enables you to have a more sustainable trends and costs on your benefit plan. So just want to make sure that you're seeing the right version of the slides.
Yeah, so right now we see the not the presentation mode. So I think we need to figure out to get into presentation mode.
So you do see the presentation mode?
No, we don't. No, we see your slides with the in PowerPoint.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Let me try again.
All right, work. Let's see.
Apologize. We'll get this sorted out. We had it all just right before the presentation, of course, but
and now we're looking at your chat screen.
Thank you.
I wish those buttons worked all the time. There's a really cute baby underneath.
Yes, those are my granddaughters. If you can see those, we're in great shape. We'll just talk about my granddaughters for the next hour. No, I apologize, folks. Okay, how about now? Are you seeing either the full slides or the presenter mode?
No, we're still seeing the PowerPoint. Maybe trying to click the button at the bottom of the screen.
The button at the bottom.
Yeah, the open book. That.
It's all the way to the right. It's the far right one. That one. Nope.
Yeah, try that one.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's close. We still see your desktop, but if you maximize it, you're good.
How's that?
Cool, we got it.
I am so sorry, folks. Thank you for your patience. Hang in there with us. Okay, so so as I mentioned, we'll cover these elements that we just reviewed. We are, as they mentioned, I am the managing partner of Fall River Benefits, but I also want to share that we're part of the Alera group, which is a nationwide family of brokerage firms, so that we can serve people all throughout the US, as well as we have 4 locations internationally. And there are a lot of resources within the firm that can help people. So I'm ready to dive right into election results. We will try to stay away from the pure politics of the election results and just focus on the facts of what happened and how it's going to impact your benefits. So to recap the federal, so you all know the Electoral College voted on Monday and confirmed the results that the AP had essentially called about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So Trump would have a total of 232 electoral votes. Biden ended up with 306, which means former Vice President Joe Biden will be the president-elect and will take office January 20th. So that is going to result in some changes that we'll discuss. The Senate race, we re-elect a third of the senators in the US every year, and the states with colors are the ones that were up for re-election this year. The darker colored states, Alabama, Colorado, and Arizona, are the states that had a Senate seat flip parties from, in the case of the blue states, from Republican to Democratic control. And in Alabama, the Democratic senator lost to his Republican opponent. So that brings closer the balance of the Senate, but I should clarify that the final outcome of the Senate race, which will change quite a bit in what gets done with regard to healthcare and benefits, for better or for worse, will depend on the Georgia special election. They're in a runoff election right now. On January 5th, they will elect 2 senators from Georgia. Right now, both of those are in Republican control. If that continues to stay the course, then Democrats will have 48 senators, Republicans will have 52, and the Mitch McConnell will continue to be the leader of the Senate. If Democrats get both of those 2 seats, the Senate will be a 50-50 even split. Because the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris is a Democrat, she will be, as the President of the Senate, able to break ties. So that will essentially mean that Democrats control the Senate, but that will require the somewhat unlikely event that Democrats win both of these seats in a historically red state. The House of Representatives is still under Democratic control, but the balance of power got a little narrower. So Republicans picked up about 9 seats. There's still a few that are haven't completely been settled as of just a couple of days ago. But it looks like the Democrats will lead the chamber by about 11 votes, as opposed to they had closer to a 30 vote margin prior. So all of these changes will have some impact on your benefit plans and the healthcare plans for the nation. So we'll go through some of these really quickly, and then I'd love to get your feedback on what you think might be impacting you. So first of all, we're going to be watching very closely whenever the president changes in the US, all of the cabinet positions change over. And so there are several cabinet positions that require Senate confirmation that have a big impact on US employers and global employers with US divisions. So that includes the Department of Labor, which has an enormous impact on employment law. There are multiple candidates, but no announcement on that yet. Health and Human Services is another area where this has a very large impact on healthcare, specifically the Affordable Care Act, and other programs such as Medicare and Medicaid. The Biden administration has named that they have nominated the current Attorney General of California, Javier Becerra. He is best known for his role in the Texas versus California Supreme Court case, which is challenging the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. Biden has also named his desired CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, as an infectious disease expert from currently at Mass General. And then the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and CMS, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, also fall under HHS. So that's a very important department as far as what you can expect around regulation with regard to the Affordable Care Act and other things affecting your benefits. Dr. Vivek Murthy is expected to return as Surgeon General. The Treasury Department, which oversees the IRS, another source of significant regulations for employers. Janet Yellen has been nominated to be the first woman to be the Treasury Secretary. And all of those require Senate confirmation, which will get underway likely sometime in January. Then there's other advisors that Biden has named that do not require Senate confirmation, such as Anthony Fauci, infectious disease expert at the NIH, will keep that role, but also become chief medical advisor. Jeffrey Zients is going to oversee coordination efforts around COVID. He's best known as the individual who sort of saved the disastrous rollout of healthcare.gov about 8 years ago. And then finally, Ron Klain as the chief of staff speaks to Biden's emphasis on managing the pandemic, because Ron Klain was actually the Ebola czar when the major Ebola outbreak in Africa in, I believe, 2014 happened. He was the one making sure that that did not come to our shores. So there are a number of initiatives that we anticipate. Unlike other Democratic candidates, Biden has never embraced Medicare for all. And so employer healthcare plans are likely to stay in place for some time now, certainly as long as Joe Biden is in office. We do think, however, there's one area of agreement that Biden actually agrees with Trump on healthcare policy, and that is the value of these new health reimbursement arrangements called HRAS. It's called an individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. And the reason why the Democrats like it is because it brings more lives into the individual marketplace that the Affordable Care Act created. This is for companies that have a segment of employees, or maybe all of their employees if they're a small business, where they can't afford to provide full health insurance for, but they want to make a premium contribution to them getting their own health insurance. They can do that. Employers can do that through an ICHRA, as long as any one employee is not offered both true health insurance and an ICHRA. There's also talk of perhaps a public option on the exchanges, which has been a popular thought line among Democrats. There may be an expansion of subsidies amounts and eligibility. More people might become eligible. Right now, you have to earn under 400% of the poverty level in the US. There might also be a further Medicaid incentive. We've got, I apologize, I don't know the number off the top of my head, somewhere around 35 states that have expanded Medicaid to a broader population with the incentives, the original financial incentives in the Affordable Care Act. But there may be additional incentives provided to the handful of outlier states that have not yet expanded coverage, most of which are states with Republican governors. There may be a federal special enrollment period added. This mainly affects people with individual insurance. And then finally, some of your employees are, very frustrated with the exchanges, because if the employer offers affordable coverage to the employees, according to the law, then no one in their family is eligible to receive an exchange subsidy. But you might like to see your employees enrolling on your plan and then getting some subsidized coverage on the exchange, because they can't afford your family health insurance. If the family glitch gets fixed, that will help employees in that situation. A few other healthcare initiatives do include lowering the Medicare age to 60. That's something that Joe Biden has talked about. Again, whether or not any of these things can get done will be determined by whether or not the Georgia Senate races go the way of Democrats and they do have control of the Senate. Otherwise, if Mitch McConnell is the majority leader, they simply don't have the power to bring up a bill to the floor, even if they might be able to get a few Republican votes to get it across the threshold. As long as the Republicans control the floor, none of these things will likely be happening. A big area that's super popular with employers, because this has been really brutal for employees over the last couple of years in particular, is this concept of surprise out-of-network billing practices. Those of you who are outside the US are probably horrified when you hear stories in the United States about how someone went to the emergency room, because they were needed an emergency appendectomy, or felt like they were dying, felt like they were having a heart attack, and ended up getting treated by a provider that was out of network and getting a huge bill, even though the member had no ability to choose where the ambulance took them to which hospital. And so this is something that Congress has been trying to put a stop to, but it's an incredibly complex issue of, if members don't get stuck paying for this, then who does? Do the doctors? Do the insurance companies? Who ends up paying for it? So they're still negotiating that. There was some movement to try to get this included with the federal funding bill that has to pass this week or next week at the latest. But it's an uphill climb. So we'll be keeping our eye on that. And then finally, prescription drug transparency is another area where Biden and Trump agree, and this has large bipartisan support, that everybody knows that the pharmaceutical industry in the United States is incredibly lucrative, makes enormous profits, and everyone would like to see a little bit more transparency on those costs and give patients some more rights as far as having some power, giving us the power to negotiate those prices a little more versus just the pure capitalism that sets those prices very high.
So Kristen, could you just dive into that a little bit more? So when we're talking about the drug price transparency, I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean? Are we going to know the price versus generic, or what?
Yep. One of the biggest initiatives is to try to create some advanced negotiation ability with regard to new specialty medications. So specialty medications are these highly specific, perhaps biologic, many times given by injection or infusion drugs that are, cost frequently tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in the United States, but those same drugs are available in other countries for a fraction of the price. And so one of the big initiatives within this price transparency is to compare the price that the pharmaceutical manufacturers want to charge and compare that, have some transparency to compare that to what patients in other countries would be charged for that same medication, especially other, developed countries like the UK, Canada, Germany. They might be paying 10 or 20% of the cost, or, maybe a third of the cost of what the United States is paying. And then in other countries, maybe more in the developing world, might be paying 10% of the cost of what they might pay in the United States for a given drug. So that kind of transparency would help them create a little bit more negotiating power around that.
Okay.
Great question. Keep them coming. Another big issue that has been winding its way through the courts for 2 years now, and definitely could impact employers enormously, is a lawsuit that is now called California v. Texas. Originally, it was Texas, and about 20 states in total sued the United States government to declare that the Affordable Care Act was unconstitutional. And specifically, their argument was that, years back, I believe this was in 2012, the Supreme Court declared that despite the challenges, the Affordable Care Act was constitutional because the individual mandate that required people to purchase insurance could be thought of as a tax, and that setting taxes is within the power of Congress to regulate, whereas Congress just forcing you to buy a product had never been done before. And so people thought that was a violation of the Commerce Clause, but they said, no, it's okay, because the mandate says you have to buy this product or there will be a tax penalty. Well, next step in the process was in 2017, in the first year of the Trump administration, a very large tax bill that gave breaks to lots of people also set that individual mandate penalty to 0. Then this lawsuit was promptly filed the following year saying, hey, you said the Affordable Care Act was constitutional because the individual mandate was a tax. Now that the tax is set to 0, it's not a tax anymore. And so now it's just a violation of the Commerce Clause, and you are, telling us to buy a product that we, shouldn't be forced to buy. And so that case, surprisingly, was the initial. Of course, they filed it in the most favorable, district in the country. They did a little bit of judge shopping and found a judge that would say, yes, absolutely, great argument. This is unconstitutional. The United States government, once that was ruled unconstitutional, refused to defend the law in court, which is normally a practice that the United States government will defend any of its laws in court if they are thrown out by a lower court. But that didn't happen. And so the state of California and Javier Becerra, whom we heard about earlier, stepped in and asked the court for permission to defend the law since the United States government would not. That's how it came to be known as California versus Texas. So, and then there are other states that have joined the argument on both sides. So the so this went to an appeals court and then ultimately to the Supreme Court. So there's three primary questions that the Supreme Court is sorting through as we speak. First is, do the plaintiffs, the state of Texas, the state of California, even have standing to be involved in this? They also have pulled some individual Texas residents who have been forced to buy insurance or pay a penalty of $0. And they're arguing that those people have been harmed by this mandate. So the court is asking, okay, do these plaintiffs even have standing? Have they been harmed? Second, is the individual mandate unconstitutional? That's a question that they're deciding. And then the most important question of all is, because the law was written without a severability clause, which is unusual, it has been argued that if one tiny clause, and this isn't even a tiny clause, it's a big one, is found to be unconstitutional, then the entire law should be thrown out. So the court will be evaluating that question. Based on the oral arguments we heard in November, what appears likely to happen is that the several justices, including some conservatives, have signaled that they are likely to sever the individual mandate from the bill. So it's unknown whether they'll declare the mandate unconstitutional, but the biggest impact on employers is based on the likelihood that the rest of the ACA will stand, which is important for employers in that there are so many other things happening as a result of the ACA. Some employers would probably welcome the disruption of all of that going away, but the ACA affects enormous things. Kids being able to stay on their parents' plan until age 26 would go away. People with pre-existing conditions not being able to be discriminated against, that would go away. There are so many things that would go away if the entire law were to be wiped from the books. So this will be a controversial case. Normally those decisions are made at the very end of the term in June, but in light of the importance of this, the court has signaled that it's possible we might get an opinion slightly earlier. Mm-hmm. So, sorry, probably more than you ever wanted to know about that case, but but it depending on how it goes, it could have a massive impact. The most likely outcome is that it's sort of a whimper and there's not much impact on employers. Remember that for employers, the employer mandate is not in question. That is still part of the law and no one is trying to strike that down. And so you still have to provide benefits if you have more than 50 or more full-time equivalents. Mm-hmm. So that mandate is staying in place. There are a whole bunch of other new laws that, of course, we want to make sure that you're aware of and how that could affect you. A couple of them relate to COVID. And we anticipate that this will be one of the most significant changes that United States residents observe with the change in presidential transition, is that there will be quite a difference in the COVID response. Biden has made it clear that this is going to be the centerpiece of his focus, certainly for the first 100 days, maybe for the first year. There may be more likely, there will be a mask mandate in the things that the president has control over, which is federal facilities, interstate transportation, and so on. Biden is arguing for hazard pay for healthcare and other frontline workers. There will likely be some more support and funding of CDC. The Congress is trying to pass another COVID relief bill, which will be welcome to many employers that may be positively impacted. Part of that is there's expected to be additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, which is helping small businesses. If relief is provided to state and local governments, that will help fire districts and police districts and other local government related municipal employers not to have to do as many layoffs in the face of the economic challenges of COVID. There may be an extension in the unemployment assistance. Right now, through the end of the year, people are getting, there was the $600 a week extra. There's a proposal right now on the table for moving that to $300 extra a week. And then some of you may recall, those of you that have been in HR, say 10 years or so or more, may recall that in the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act in 2009, we had a COBRA subsidy where the federal government would reimburse employers for 65% of the COBRA costs, so that unemployed, employees who had been laid off only had to pay 35%. I think that would be a welcome change for many employers and their employees. No one wants to have to do layoffs. It's nice to know your people have some help if that happens. And so they're attempting to squeeze that into a COVID bill this week or next week. Also note that the regulatory arm of the new government will likely require that the COVID coverage expansions continue past 12/31. Those are the requirements that insurance companies must cover COVID testing for free, that they are, encouraged to cover COVID testing and, all of the treatment associated with COVID with no cost sharing. So those are something that we would like to see continued. And then finally, we just want to make everybody aware that, Alera we've been doing numerous actuarial studies. I'm not the only actuary in the organization by any means. And earlier this year, we determined that much to people's surprise, who were really worried about the cost of COVID, the costs of treating and testing for COVID are actually less than the cost savings employers have received this year from the delay and deferral of elective procedures such as surgeries or other procedures that people are not getting in 2020 because, in the beginning, hospitals, closed all beds to elective procedures, made everything available for COVID. That loosened up over the summer, but we could get there again. So could be that elective procedures are just completely not available, or simply many patients are just choosing to defer that because they don't want to be in a hospital right now.
Right. Well, that's got to unwind itself at some point, right? So if you
That's
decide
right.
not to have that elective surgery this year and you're pushing it off to 2021 or the following year,
Right.
it's going to be even a larger increase at some point, right?
Yep. And that's exactly what our actuaries are watching for. If keep in mind that hospitals always have a limited capacity, right? And so there is, if nobody got elective procedures in 2020, they would not all be able to get them in 2021 because there simply wouldn't be enough capacity. Hospitals run at about 70% of the time when there's 70% full when there's no healthcare crisis, right? And so as long as COVID is a factor, there's just going to be a limit on the capacity of people to get these procedures. And so we're watching closely to see, when does that boomerang come back? And when is that going to start factoring into people's health insurance renewals? I will share with you all that, again, we feared what our 2021 renewal is going to look like. Turns out it went the other way, that people were getting unusually lower renewals in many cases, or at least finding their insurance companies very willing to negotiate. What we've seen this fall as we've negotiated for our employers is we've seen a lot of insurance companies come out with double-digit renewals, but being very soft about, they don't want to lose business because they know how hard it is to get new business in this time. And so they have been incredibly willing to negotiate. We've been negotiating 20% renewals down to single digits, 15% renewals down to fives. I mean, it's kind of silly right now that the insurance companies are asking for such big increases because they think the boomerang is coming. And so they're trying to get the big increases, but we've been very successful in negotiating them down. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah, great to know. I mean, for those companies that don't have the benefit of your services, I mean, they're probably just thinking that this is what it is. This is what it's been in the past several years, but they don't know any different. So it's good to reach out and educate yourself. That's great.
Yeah, that's right. Keep in mind that what I'm describing, it has to do with large employers, over 100 employees in the US, self-funded employers where they have negotiation ability. There is, or in many states, over 50 employees, they have the ability to negotiate. But in any time you're in a community rated world, which is under 50 employees in most states, under 100 employees in Colorado, California, a handful of other states, that's the community rated world where the insurance companies file their rates with the Division of Insurance, and the rates are the rates are the rates. And so in that case, unfortunately, there is no negotiation available, but the increases that we've seen are mostly single digits.
Yeah, and I suppose that a lot of multinationals that might be listening might have small shops here in the U.S. and they, and is there anything else that they have to be concerned about here other than the below 50 threshold?
Well, I think that, those multinational shops should be aware that if they've got at least, say, 20 employees in the US, but maybe not 50 or 100 to get that negotiation ability, that one way to get some of that ability is to consider a partially self-funded arrangement called level funding, where it looks exactly like a fully insured product, but it is negotiable, unlike the community rated fully insured rates. So it has very limited risk, some potential upside, but it's got the regulatory structure of large self-funded plans. So it's definitely something to look at for those that have a smaller population, say between 20 and 100 employees, and don't feel like they've had enough control over their healthcare costs. That's a way to get more control.
Oh, great.
But we'll actually talk about that a little later in one of our strategy slides. Of course, the COVID vaccine is out. This is the big news this week, is that that's starting to be distributed. We actually do already have Pfizer approval. Moderna should be next. AstraZeneca was one of the first vaccines out, but it does not yet have its approval process. I've got a Colorado note here because that's where we're based, but both states and the federal CDC have released guidance on who should get the vaccines first. Right now, we just need to be aware that there's only enough doses to inoculate a portion of our frontline healthcare and long-term care facility workers. And so it will be months before most Americans, even essential workers, will have wide access to a vaccine. So just be patient for your employees. And then we've got some guidance out right now. Our Alera compliance team has put out a really nice piece about planning for the for the vaccine for the virus when it comes available to you. Many employers are asking themselves, well, maybe I'll just make the vaccine mandatory so that my employees can have a safe environment to work in. But that's, of course, fraught with a number of problems. So both ADA and Title VII are going to potentially present some barriers to a mandatory vaccine program. Now, if you are a healthcare worker where the workers in question are exposed to COVID-19, you may well be able to make it mandatory for certain workers, but you're probably not going to be able to do that globally across the entire workforce. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to plan for in that.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of grumbling about that of people, employees fearing that it may be mandatory in some areas, and they think that safety goes both ways. I mean, they're afraid that the vaccine's not ready, and they're worried about getting it at that point. And so the safe work environment it's complicated, right?
It is complicated, and employers truly have a real challenge ahead of them because OSHA requires that they provide a safe workplace. Yet they also have, obligations to not discriminate against someone with a disability that prevents them from taking a vaccine, someone with a sincerely held religious belief that indicates that they must decline that type of healthcare. And so, the employers need to get creative. By the time this is widely available come spring or summer, I'm hoping that a lot of the safety questions will be answered about, is the vaccine safe to take? And we don't know that, but that's my hope. But by that point in time, employers need to think about their workforces and how they can accommodate people who, for religious or disability reasons, will refuse to take the vaccine. Other people who maybe just out of personal belief don't want to take the vaccine, and how they do that while still creating a safe workplace. So there may, if you've got the option to have some employees work remote, that's a good opportunity for those who don't want to take a vaccine. If employers are really going to have to get creative about this. So, you've been doing that. You're going to continue to do that until, we've got sort of a wide segment of the population that's been inoculated.
Right.
So good. Okay. Any other questions about the election and the impacts before we fly through a quick section on benchmarking?
No, I think that was great, Kristen. We went through a great amount of detail there, so thank you.
Yep. Yeah. I'll speed up because I probably went into too much detail. Let's talk a little bit about the first step in a good benefit strategy is to understand how your benefits stack up to other employers. And so, you know, employers have some tools available to them to do that. There is some publicly available data, but most employers will rely on a benchmarking survey. So Alera's survey has some interesting conclusions. You know, Sam, I believe all of the participants are receiving the slides afterwards. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. We'll have
Great.
those
And so I won't spend a lot of time on these key insights because some of them are very unsurprising. You know, medical, dental, pharmacy, and life are the most desired benefits. That won't be a surprise to anybody in the US. Employees are working longer. Again, no surprise. Even though they're eligible for Medicare at 65, they often will want to stay on that plan. High deductible health plans and traditional PPO plans are the most common benefits. No surprise there. Lots of different ways to try to keep costs under control. I'll walk you through a few that we think are really valuable. I know, Sam, so disability and retirement benefits are very prevalent, but not universal, which is, again, unique to the US among developed nations, that there is less coverage of those types of things. And then, Sam, I know you're interested in the trends around telemedicine and mental health. These
Right.
are sort of the new exploding benefits for 2021. So if you don't have a telemedicine option in your plan, by all means, please implement that yesterday. If you do have a telemedicine, ask yourself what barriers you have in place. A lot of plans will charge their members the same $20, $30, $40 copay to speak to a telemedicine doctor that they do to go to a in-person doctor visit. We would really encourage you to rethink that and move to a zero cost telemedicine so that there is no barrier keeping people from seeking care and getting the care they need without feeling like they need to risk their health or safety to go out to a doctor in person. EAPs are a vitally important part of your mental health care strategy, but we do encourage you not to stop there. Employers also we're seeing more and more of a trend of arranging for telemedicine benefits that also include mental health, and arranging for mental health to be covered even more favorably sometimes than physical health. The mental health parity law says you have to cover it at least as favorably, but you know, usually that means that a therapist, you end up paying a specialist copay to go to a therapist. Some are taking that down to the level of a PCP copay or even lower. There are organizations out there, Sondermind is one of our favorite, I'll put in a plug for them, where they can help you administer any plan design you want to use with their mental health network of therapists. And you can set it up so that it's a $1 copay, a $5 copay, absolutely free for mental health services. It's phenomenal. They're not the only provider out there, but they're a local business here in Denver, Colorado, and we love them.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, Kristen, you know, in the past, there's been some stigma around EAP programs or mental health and the participation rate by employees, especially in the US, as they've been fearful that, hey, if I take advantage of this benefit and my employer figures this out, they're going to find out that maybe I have some cognitive problems or something like this, and been afraid. Has that been reversing over the past few years?
Well, I think that employees have gotten used to the idea that, first of all, their employer can no longer fire them for having a disability that is a mental health issue, right? Like, I think employees are getting more savvy about that. Secondly, they're really starting to hear us. You know, for 15 years, I've been standing up in open enrollment meetings and telling them, if you go to the EAP, all your employer will ever see is that one visit happened. They will never know who it was. They will never know what it was for. And, you know, we really encourage you to take advantage of this 100% confidential program. So I think that message is starting to sink in over the years. There's a lot of reasons why people are slow to use EAPs. First of all, it can be challenging to find a provider. Secondly, it's people are so busy in their lives, and many of us tend to neglect our own issues, right? We're so busy taking care of our kids and our, you know, parents and whatever else that, you know, my mental health seems to be like the last thing on the peg, you know? And then somewhat, maybe there is some stigma, I think, especially among heavily male populations, that, you know, that's something that we don't need because we're strong, tough guys, you know? So I always stand up in every open enrollment and say, hey, I'm a pretty strong lady. I'm a successful CEO and I use my EAP. It is so valuable. So, we just keep trying to communicate that. If you've got people within your organization that are willing to speak up and be a champion and say, hey, I saw a therapist because my teenagers were driving me crazy and man, it really helped. I have so many more tools. Those are the types of success stories that can be really helpful. We've got a couple slides, and again, I won't go through everything on this, but what this shows is the blue lines represent benefits that employers already offer. The green bars represent the percent of employers that are thinking of offering that, and the orange represents that employers that don't offer these benefits at all. So you can see that, I look for the trends in what's big. Of course, health and medical is already offered by most everybody, but the big areas, people are considering maybe more a long-term disability benefit is a big one that's getting more attention. Health savings accounts are getting more and more attention simply because employers have to have cost savings. Another area that you'll see, people are really interested in health reimbursement accounts, which we're going to talk about as a strategy. Long-term care plans are very difficult to purchase on your own if you have a pre-existing condition. So if you do it through an employer, that can be great. These HRAS that we mentioned earlier are getting a lot of attention. And then I think EAP might have been on the previous page. Oh, it's just not mentioned. I'm sorry. I'd have that one left off. So, pet insurance. That's another one. We get a lot of requests for pet insurance. Remember that these are coverages that the employer can offer at no cost. You might be administering direct payroll, payroll deposit deductions, but maybe not. It's a simple, easy thing, and your millennial employees are going to love it. So that's something we encourage you to think about.
Yeah, that's one I hear about with our international friends about pet insurance and being included in some of the benefits of US, and they're like, what is this?
What? Right? Yeah, I think much like medical care in the US, veterinary care has become extraordinarily expensive. I've had multiple $1,000 plus bills for my dog. So, it definitely is something people want help financing. Another cool benefit that we love seeing on here is student debt repayment. That is a typical program is employees can still get their 401k match by putting the required contribution, not into the 401k, but into their student loans instead. And if the employee makes that student loan repayment, then the employer will still match their 401k. So that's one creative way to do it. Other employers are actually directly contributing to student debt. Alera is doing a really cool benefit this year, which we think of it more as a charitable contribution, where we are contributing to medical debt repayment, not of our own employees, but we are going to be paying off about $20 million of medical debt this year for people who have experienced a financial hardship. So that's a pretty cool thing in a COVID world that we're excited about. That's the kind of thing employers can get involved in. So want to just take you through quickly some median benefit levels for United States benefit plans. So if you are a multinational and you're thinking about what your benefit plan should be in the US, this is some good guidance. This is a typical PPO plan at the median level. This is a typical high deductible health plan. And then
one thing with
pharmacy.
Kristen, there's some variation between certain industries. Is that correct? Like technology versus high tech.
Oh, sure. Yep. You're going to see these median plans that we're showing you are, a median across all industries, but in the technology fields, in any white collar professional fields, you're going to see richer contributions from the employer to the premiums, maybe even 100% for at least a single person. You're going to see richer benefits, typically in a white collar arrangement, although conversely, you're also far more likely to see high deductible health plans paired with a health savings account in a sophisticated white collar environment. That may not be the best fit for a blue collar group where people don't have a lot of access to computers, don't have a lot of healthcare literacy, or literacy in general. And so that can be a challenging benefit for those groups. So you'll see a mix in a white collar tech type environment.
Okay.
Okay, so typical contribution to a health savings account. If you're going to put in place a high deductible health plan, we definitely believe you need to seed the HSA at a minimum in the first year, but really employees expect every year you'll be making some type of contribution. Employers can do HSA contributions on a matching basis. They also can do HSA contributions that are tied to a wellness incentive, which is something that we encourage a lot. So just a couple of things to be aware of. And then also just wanted to share a national average of what a paid time off or sick and vacation pay tend to look like. Normally, a PTO bank is an all-inclusive concept, and this is including all of the days that an organization might give to its employees to use for any purpose. If they don't bundle it in just PTO, they might have separate days for sick days versus vacation versus personal leave. Some states, Colorado included, now have mandated sick days. And so some employers in Colorado, Arizona has a similar law, there are others out there, may be leaving the concept of a PTO bank and going to separate buckets again to accommodate the new laws requiring a certain amount of sick leave. Okay, so I think that's the end of our benchmarking. I want to talk quickly about strategy, but first want to see what other questions you all have about who's, who's doing what and any other trends.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, go ahead and please put them in the chat box and we can bring those up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
Otherwise,
I'll
we'll
make
just
sure
dive
Lauren-
into a couple strategy ideas unless, Smit, we've got any questions right now.
None really. We were talking about the surprising policy around pet insurance. That's a whole new ball game with, attitudes for them as being our children instead of.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, it was like, oh, the dog has cancer, it's time to put him down. I think people have come to have, it was only one generation prior that dogs weren't even allowed in the house, it's just become a different world. So let's talk a little strategy here. So there are ways that savings can be identified in plans. And we, the traditional model says, well, we got a renewal increase, it's higher than we want. So we need to either raise our deductibles or do something else to scale back our plan design, or we need to pass more of the premiums and the increase onto the employees. That's kind of a traditional reactive approach. We really like to look at it differently and use a proactive approach where, wait a minute, let's dig into the plan designs, the networks, all of the incentives in the plan and run some scenarios, because a lot of times we can find an equivalent benefit plan that costs less. A lot of times employers are spending their money in one way on healthcare, whether that's on a really rich deductible or whatever it might be. And if that money is just redirected and repurposed, you can create a plan that gives equivalent employees to your benefits, but ends up costing you a lot less. With those savings, you can either put those to the bottom line if that's what your company most needs in this challenging COVID time, or you can repurpose those into even richer benefits than what you had before, but doing it for the same bottom line budget. So we've had organizations, that we've done anywhere from, a small organization with 50 employees saving, $40,000 or $50,000 that enabled them to round out their benefit package. We've had companies with 300 or 400 employees save $500,000 just simply by looking at their plans differently and getting away from the traditional model. There's been a lot of short-term savings that can be realized. And when I say short-term, I mean they're one-time savings. Those savings will happen again next year, but it won't be another new reduction again next year. For that, we have some long-term strategies that help you bend trends over time. So, for example, rather than having a $1,000 deductible, which is as much money as that sounds like to some people, that would be considered a very rich plan in the US. What if the employer were to rearrange and have maybe a $3,000 deductible, but then use the savings to create a fund of upfront money where some employees, like if you had a health reimbursement arrangement that said, we'll pay the first $1,000 of your healthcare bills, but then you've got a higher deductible after that, many employees would have their entire medical bills paid for the year and never have a dime out of pocket. Whereas, remember, very few people are hitting those deductibles. So a lot of your people aren't even benefiting from the incredibly rich plan that you're giving them. And you might be able to repurpose some of those dollars. Now, some of these strategies are going to work better in some environments than others, but we think it's worth getting outside the box and looking differently at these plans. Once you've done that and you've created some savings, there are some long-term strategies to try to keep your plans running well from a trend point of view. These are the types of areas that I looked at when I was an underwriting manager, handing out thousands and thousands of renewals every year. I knew that employers that followed the strategies I'm about to show you were going to get better renewals the following year. Whoops, sorry, this is the makeup of how those scenarios might look, but I'll get to these trends. Number one, they've got to be figuring out how to direct their employees to more efficient ways to get health care. We spend a lot of money in emergency rooms, hospitals, and facilities that are not the most efficient way to be delivering our care. If we can get more people at more efficient locations, whether that's telemedicine, convenience clinics, using reference-based pricing to set a cap on the surgery costs we're paying, there's so many ways to drive more efficiency in our system. We need to help people overcome the barriers they face to getting healthier. And a lot of that has to do with the cost of medication and specialist visits that it takes to manage a chronic condition well. Someone might know, well, I really should go see my specialist every quarter for my diabetes, but I just can't afford the $75 specialist copay this quarter, so I'm not going to do it. And then before they know it, the cost goes down and down. Or the health outcome, I should say, goes down and down. The cost goes up because it gets more expensive to treat.
Right.
We also, most wellness programs that we run as employers don't work very well, and that's because the incentives aren't set up correctly. Unless we are achieving 80% or greater uptake in some of our initiatives, we're probably not reaching the least healthy members that really need the benefits. Everybody's put on a lunch and learn before about nutrition, trying to help their diabetics, and the only people that show up are the marathon runners that are trying to improve their time, right? And so, unless you design your wellness programs specifically to incent those who most need help to get it, you're generally not going to create enough behavior change to improve your healthcare costs. So that's something that is very important to do. We need to make sure we teach employees better consumerism because, again, the United States healthcare system is a very strange animal. It's one of the only economic marketplaces where the person who's consuming the goods and services is not the one paying for them. And that creates all kinds of strange incentives. The only corollary I can really think of is a teenage girl at the mall with her parents' credit card. She doesn't necessarily have an incentive to make to search out the best value, right? And so we do the same thing in our healthcare system, and we need to teach our employees and give them financial incentives to be smarter with both their money and yours. And then finally, if you do all of these things, we want to make sure that the financial benefits of your hard work don't just go to the insurance company, but that you as the employer get to participate in some of them too. The idea of self-funding is a broad spectrum. People are a little scared of it because they've heard of the way big companies do self-funding, and that wouldn't work for a small company, but there are solutions all along the spectrum level. We talked about a level funding product where it looks and feels and tastes exactly like fully insured, but if things go well, you get some money back at the end of the year. If things don't go well, you don't, but you don't pay any more. And that's a really simple baby step to start with, as is a health reimbursement arrangement that we talked about earlier. So these are some strategies of how people are managing their healthcare costs successfully. These have been proven by research that these really do make a difference over time, along with some other strategies that, really only big companies have access to if they have unbundled self-funding. But I wanted to kind of give the broad brush and get your feedback. What's working for you guys? Are any of you in the chat, please type in the chat box. Let us know if you're using any of these strategies and if anything has worked for you.
Yeah, I think this is really helpful, Kristen. And what I want to do right now is we're waiting for questions. I'm going to launch our polling.
Great.
so that if anybody wants to get a little bit more consultation for you or dive into some of these strategies that they can reach out.
Yep.
So go ahead and feel free to sign up here, and then we'll put you in touch with Kristen. Also, as we mentioned before, we do have at the very top of the free TMA assessment that I talked about at the beginning of the call here. So you can sign up for that if you'd like to see what that looks like. That's for free as well, with a free coaching session that comes with that piece.
Fantastic. Yeah, if anybody's curious about these scenarios we were talking about where we're saving people hundreds of thousands, that's an area where we can definitely spend our 15-minute consult.
Great. All right. Well, as questions come in, if we have any questions come in, we'll bring those up. But given that we only have a few more minutes, let's dive into the closing here. I want
Very good.
So first of all, just once again, I think that you can see my screen. Is that right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Right. So just if you want to sign up for that free TMA assessment, go ahead and do that through the poll. Otherwise, I want to make everybody aware of our speaker for next week. We're going to have Barbara Brooks and Guadalupe Hurt is going to be talking about how we rise. So basically rebuilding your personal brand for next year, as we're starting to think about those goals and objectives that we want to accomplish for ourselves. One of the most important things that we can do as a professional is to think about how we show up at work, what our brand says about ourselves, and how we can improve that going on. So do join us for next week.
Fantastic.
But I would like to really thank you, Kristen, for bringing all this great benefit knowledge, and so thank you so much for your time here. And
Always helpful.
Yeah, very good. Great. So as we're and now that we're at the top of the hour, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And do we have any final questions or anything, team? Lisa or Shar? Smith?
No questions. That was a great discussion, though. So much really concrete information there, Kristen. I mean, you really put it out in a very digestible way, but just so many details. I'm looking forward to getting that PowerPoint to just reference some of them. And I was really struck by the idea of just how we can get even better at incenting people individually to help lower costs of healthcare and companies, because a lot of need around that, and
People are struggling with it.
healthcare costs in general within control. So awesome.
Yeah. I mean, a 6% increase doesn't sound that bad in light of
Oh my
historical, but if you get a 6% increase every year in just 12 years, your healthcare costs will have doubled. That's devastating.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah,
Kristen,
I definitely am looking forward to learning more about what you offer through my own company, and particularly with the COVID response. Helping my employees through this, because we have had several scares in my company, as well as in Montana, we had 2 actual positive COVIDs. So it's very difficult to navigate as a startup company, new and upcoming company. So appreciate what you think.
Have you looked at these ICHRAs, Shar? That might be a great fit for a startup company.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
Yeah,
definitely we can talk about that.
Yeah, I can put you in touch with the individual we recommend that can help. Basically, all your employees would get their own individual health insurance, and we can recommend someone that brokers all of that. And then you wrap an ICHRA around it, and that enables you to make a pre-tax contribution towards their individual premium. And you decide the budget.
And
well, we're always open to new ideas around benefits, so thank you.
Yeah.
Great. And one thing we have Susan raised her hand about it's helpful to have a financial view. I mean, one thing it's these increasing healthcare costs squeeze the amount of value that we can drive to employees through cash compensation and a lot of different methods, employee programs. And so it really is important for us to keep those costs lean and as much as possible. And would you have anything else to say about that there, Kristen?
Well, I just wanted to affirm that view. We were working with one employer on their scenarios, and because the savings were going to be about $500,000 for them, they were debating, okay, do we do we eliminate the premiums that people formerly had to pay out of their paychecks? Or do we just give everybody a raise with this money? Which is going to play better, you know, as far as our retention ability? And I think they came down on the idea of making their health insurance free, or, you know, for certain segments a lot cheaper, that would actually have more of an impact psychologically than giving, you know, a 0.5% raise, for example, or whatever was equivalent. You know, it might be the same $1,000 in an employee's paycheck that year, but what's coming out for health insurance is just super visible.
Did that play out that way?
I don't know what they ended up doing,
Yeah.
actually. So
Yeah, I'm curious about that, because I agree from a cultural standpoint, you definitely want to have the sort of, not just the optics, but the feeling of the employee feeling supported. So,
right.
Cool.
Yeah, but at least, I mean, it's a way better conversation to be having than to say, all right, we gotta, you know, are we gonna not give raises this year, or are we gonna just charge the employees a lot more for health insurance, right? That's not nearly as fun of a conversation as should we give everybody a raise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I often talk about these things and together when we're advising clients. I mean,
You
it's
really have to.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
Totally-
smart. You can't really make compensation decisions unless you've made good benefits decisions, because you know that those benefits are just going to eat into your comp pool every year unless you have a more sustainable strategy.
That is correct. Mm-hmm. Great.
Great
All right. Well,
discussion.
thank you so much, Kristen, for all the wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Be
All right.
delighted anytime.
Everybody on the call. So thank you so much. We're coming into the holiday season, so I want to make sure that wish everybody a happy holidays if you don't join us in the following week. So take care.
Thank you.
All
Happy
right.
holidays.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye.